In this video, we're going to be talking about why sexual connection tends to go into neutral in a long-term relationship, what it actually means, and how to bring pleasure, passion, and connection back to your marriage, both in and out of the bedroom. So if you're feeling like your partner is cold, distant, or just even distracted, and sexual connection is something that seems like something only that you used to have and not something that you're currently having, this video is for you. I'm going to talk about different areas as to what exactly is going on and how you can lead your relationship back to pleasure and connection, both in and out of the bedroom. So I'm Eric MacDougall. I'm a certified master relationship coach. I help high-achieving husbands and growth-minded couples who want to overcome their disconnection cycles and really reconnect to make sure the best years of their marriage are ahead of them. So first thing to know is that this problem is not just about sex. I've seen so many men just try to coerce, convince, get their partner to have sex with them, and really coming out of this place like, oh, I need sex, it's something I need, and really trying to convince them to give themselves up, to give their partner to sacrifice themselves in order to have sexual connection. And a lot of times, the sexual connection that you're having might just not be worth wanting for your partner. So take that into consideration. But really, in a long-term marriage, there's plenty of reasons why sexual connection kind of neutralizes and why this problem isn't just about sex. I'm always reminded of this idea of brakes and accelerators, right? So when you think about what leads to more pleasure and connection, think about it like a dual control system, right? So first is you have the accelerator. And for a lot of men, this is kind of what we're moving towards all the time. How do I accelerate towards sex? I'm going to light some candles. I'm going to bring some music. I'm going to bring some energy. And then that's going to wake my partner up and they're going to move towards sex. They don't take into consideration the brakes. So what are things that are getting in the way of me and my partner experiencing sexual connection together? If you're only focused on accelerating and your partner has their foot firmly on the brake, well, your car's not going to go anywhere. And so really starting to understand, what are some of the things that help accelerate the mind towards sex for both of you, and what are things that put on the brakes, right? An example of that is that, a great brake would be when I'm not emotionally connected, I have a brake towards sexual pleasure and connection, meaning you or your partner might need to feel emotionally connected and emotionally safe to open themselves up sexually. And so that's perfectly normal. So now you get to kind of hang out with that. And it's like, hey, if you were to kind of take your foot off and remove the brake, what would need to happen? How can I bring more emotional connection so that that's no longer a brake for you? Now, I'm not saying that we're going to accelerate towards anything, but I actually just want to know what kind of emotional security you need in order to start opening yourself up to this type of connection, right? So that's really important to understand, is that most of the time, it's not about the sex. It's more about emotional security and really what's going on below the vulnerability threshold, which a lot of times we're not even aware of and don't have the skills to talk about. The second really is why desire fades. And this is like totally normal in long-term relationships, right? If you think about the ways relationships evolve, there's kind of these 4 stages when it comes to the drivers of sexual desire. The first is lust, right? And that's kind of where it starts. You lust after another. Somebody lusts after another. And typically in the lust phase, it has less to do with a single person. It has more to do with like what you want to experience, right? It's kind of the euphoria of it all. When you see people who are just having sex with multiple partners over and over again, it's mostly about lust and what they're experiencing than it is about any form of connection. So that's kind of the base level of what drives sexual desire. When you evolve beyond that is what we call romantic love. And this is when, one person becomes the focal point of your desire. So, a lot of times this needs to happen in order for us to evolve. We have to enter into romantic love. This is a lot of what the fantasies are about, right? That feeling like, oh, I feel it. And then that's the feeling that goes away, right? It's like, oh, when somebody says like, I just don't feel it anymore, what they mean is that they're not experiencing the same type of rush that romantic love brings in. And there's a whole reason for that, right? Which I can explain. But this is the second level, which now is no longer about I want to experience something, but it's I want to experience something with this person. So it becomes more about specificity. And so now you zone out all other options and you're only focused on one person, probably what happened at the start of your relationship. The third level is what we call attachment, right? And this is really about security, about a connection. And attachment needs to happen, right? It needs to evolve from romantic love to attachment, because attachment is what helps us create bonds, helps us create safety, and really helps our species to continue to grow and propagate and evolve, right? Because if we did not feel secure and we're not focused on attachment, we would not be doing the biological thing that we want to do, which is continuing to have kids, raise kids, and then them to have kids and raise kids, etc., right? If humanity was only focused on romantic love, well, the biggest impediment of romantic love is to have kids. So why would we have kids, right? If we're just focused on romantic love and that's all we want to experience all the time, that euphoria of having it with a single person, we would not do anything else that gets in the way of that. And so we have to actually evolve beyond romantic love and move into what we call attachment in order to be that third driver of sexual desire. Now, this is typically where a lot of couples end up, right? So we've done it all, we've created the attachment, now we have the kids, we have the house, we have this system of relating, and then desire dies. And we need to understand that the last level, right, is kind of the cheat code, the highest level, if you will, is the exploration and affirmation of the solid, flexible self. And again, that's a lot. But really what it means is that you are starting to affirm yourself as an individual. And that in and of itself drives desire. Now, why is that, right? Well, first of all, if you're not focused on growing your sense of self and you're only focused on putting on a mask for everybody, well, then you're only going to do the minimum, and you're really only going to start to engage in certain things based on the removal of safety or the upgrade of tension, right? So a lot of people live this way. They just live their whole lives avoiding tension, prioritizing comfort, and therefore there's no drive to do anything unless there's discomfort. And when discomfort arises, all they're going to do is try to move away from that discomfort. And if having sex with your partner removes the discomfort, so if you need to appease your partner by having sex with them once a week, and then they go away and they leave you alone until the next week, well, you might be having, duty sex in order to appease them. And that's an example of you not stepping into the fourth level of sexual desire, because when you enter into the fourth level, it really becomes about this being-centered relatedness, which is, I understand my own needs. I know what I want. It's important to understand what my partner wants. And then with them, we're going to collaborate on this. But if in those moments, think about like performative sex, if you're in the moment having sex with your partner and you're only focused on they have to orgasm and they need to be satisfied and they need to like it and they need to, well, now that's your ego being fed, and that's not the solid, flexible self. That's the reflected self, meaning I need my partner to see me a certain way in order to continue to have sex with me. And so you're going to hide the parts of yourself that maybe you dislike, and you're only going to show the parts of yourself that you want to have your partner accept. And what that does is it removes desire, because one of the most vulnerable things that we do, especially in long-term relationships, is have sex with each other, right? We get naked. And this is why we get into the type of sexual relationship that is more about transactional sex, which is, hey, let's do the same thing once a night, every Wednesday, instead of like discovering each other and really opening up about my fantasies, what I want, what I don't like, what I feel insecure about. Because in order to do that, you need to be able to stand up for yourself. You need to be able to face that tension in order to create more of what you want. And so a lot of people, we hang out in the attachment phase, or we try to chase the romantic phase, right? If you've ever said, I just want it to be like it used to be, that's chasing the romantic phase. Well, then you're always going to be stuck in this limbo, this roommate stalemate, where you're like, things are good, but I don't get why we're not having sex. It's because you've each lost yourself in the safety and security of the attachment phase, instead of growing as individuals and using the relationship to mirror and bring tension to each of you. And it's a very human thing, but in order to continue our sexual relationship, just like me and my wife have, right? We're pushing the boundaries and we're accepting that we're experiencing our own tension and discomfort in that moment, right? And that's how we can be present. That's how we can talk about pleasure. That's how we can open up about what we like and don't like. And a lot of us have not been taught how to have these conversations about sex, because maybe we were raised in homes where sex was a taboo and you couldn't talk about it. So really, really important to understand these different levels. Now, the other thing too is you don't want to really focus on fixing sex. You want to focus instead on creating connection. And this is what I see a lot of people do, right? They're so focused on having sex. They're literally getting to a place where they talk about it all the time. Oh, I haven't had sex in 53 days, and they're just like, who cares? Like, why are you focused on that? I get it. You're like, it's not a good thing. I have to fix this. I get where the brain goes. But instead, what if you just took sex off the table for 30 days, because you might already be doing that, and instead you deliberately focused on connection, getting to know my partner, hearing about their fears, hearing about what's going on for them, validating their experience. And this is where a lot of people, we lose ourselves. We're so focused on the act of sexual intercourse and how to create more of it, especially for men, that we lose sight about the other part of what it's really about, which is deep pleasure and connection with another person. Okay, so that's the third thing. It's like, stop focusing on fixing your sex life and start leading the connection, true connection in your relationship. Now, before we keep going, if you are finding value in this video, please like, subscribe, share it with somebody you know that might get some value from it. This not only helps me get the word out, but it really helps you make sure that you don't miss a video, because I put out 2 videos every single week for you to learn more about how you can lead yourself and lead your relationship to make sure the best years are ahead of you. Now, one last thing to touch on here that is getting in the way of creating sexual connection before we move on to how you can lead that connection in your relationship is that a lot of us, we take our partner's responses to our advances as rejection. And it's really important to reframe that. Now, I get it. The ego wants to protect itself. A lot of times as humans, right, when we're feeling really vulnerable, it's natural for us to guard ourselves. And so some of us in relationship have just stopped bidding for connection, right? This is kind of what I hear all the time. It's like, my partner stopped initiating and they refused me when I initiated. So I just decided to stop initiating altogether to see what happens. So I just totally leave it up to them to decide when they want to have sex. Sure, I mean, you could do that. That's a great way to protect yourself. It's a great way to avoid the tension that you might be feeling when you get refused. But it's really important to start to shift this mindset in terms of your partner refusing your advances is not about rejecting you. It's more about protecting themselves. And this is especially true for women, right? Women will not be opening themselves up sexually if they do not feel emotionally connected and emotionally secure. That's really important to understand, especially in long-term relationships, right? In the beginning, some women open themselves up to sex in order to procreate, have kids, build a family, etc., right? To appease. But over time, what happens is once they have this beautiful family life, they're distracted all the time, they have all this stress going on, they no longer want to be having the type of sex that's not worth wanting and where they constantly have to sacrifice parts of who they are or protect themselves in order to engage in a sexual relationship. And so just switch that framing, is that if your partner is refusing your advances, it's not necessarily true that they're rejecting you, which is more about your ego. It's actually more about them protecting themselves. And so really switch that frame so you can start understanding what they're protecting themselves from, how can you support them, how can you make it okay that they want to protect themselves, et cetera, right? Now, here's what I want you to think about when it comes to rebuilding that sexual connection, right? So first, building up your sexual connection starts with non-sexual intimacy. I've had so many men that I work with, and they hate hearing this, right? They join my program. They're like, yeah, Eric's going to help me have a beautiful, connection with my wife, emotional, physical, sexual. And then for a lot of men, what I say is, hey, you need to be open that sex is off the table. You just say that to your partner, that you're no longer going to pursue sexual connection with your wife right now. And they get all angry. But the reality is that men, we use sex as a soothing mechanism, right? To avoid any sort of real tension in the relationship. So tension comes up, then we have sex, tension goes away until the next time tension comes up, then we have sex, tension goes away. And some people live in that dependent state, forever. And so what that does is it takes away from any sort of non-sexual intimate connection that you can have. Emotional connection, right? In terms of emotional intimacy, mental intimacy, physical affection that has nothing to do with sexuality, but more has to do with caretaking, right? And this is really important to understand, is that if you're just focused on all your narrative moving towards having sexual connection with your partner, well, then everything has, a little bit of a manipulation behind it. And your partner's going to feel that. And that's where they don't want anything to do with it, right? So start focusing on non-sexual types of intimacy in order to really start to bring more passion, more pleasure, and more connection. And what I've seen time and time again is when men start to focus on that, well, then their wives start to open up and move towards them, and they end up having better sex than if they were just constantly trying to get their wives to have sex with them, okay? So think about your role as a leader when it comes to connection. Think about how you connect. Are you actually present? Do you actually hold space for her? Are you a good listener? Are you checking in with her? Or are you just living your life and then coming to her when you want something for yourself, right? So really, really important to understand that. What you really want to start doing when it comes to leading in the connection in your relationship, the first thing is to normalize their current experience. So when you think about these breaks that I talked about, right? Things that are getting in the way of one person or both people experiencing pleasure and connection when it comes to sexual intimacy. The way to remove the foot off the brakes is to create acceptance of their current state. So think about, you or your partner going through a really tough time, and then in their head, they're having all these, I'm not a good enough wife, I'm not having enough sex with my husband, I don't like my body anymore, I'm going through menopause and I'm broken, right? Imagine just the way that weight puts pressure on a human being. And men have this too, right? I see it all the time. I'm not providing enough for my family, my partner doesn't like me enough, I'm not showing up enough as a provider, my partner's always unhappy and it's my fault. So usually the internal dialogue that we're sitting with. Well, that's a major, major break, right? Because none of us want to be having sex when we're just living in our heads, right? It's very hard to connect to pleasure when we have that dialogue going on in our heads. And so what you want to be doing is you want to accept and normalize that what they're experiencing is exactly what it is. It's just normal, right? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get help. I'm not saying you shouldn't support them. But this is what I think even about menopause, right? It's how many people in the world are trying to slow down menopause or get rid of menopause or move through menopause. And I get it, it's painful. I'm not a woman, right? But my wife is going to experience it. And I have plenty of clients who their wives are experiencing it. And the best way that they feel connected with their partners and their partners feel connected to them is to really create space for their partners to open up about their experience of menopause, the pain, the grief, right? The relationship they're having with their body. But the more they're into okay, we're going to call a doctor, we're going to fix this, we're going to get you on meds so you can have sex again, now you're getting away from the acceptance of the experience. And instead you're saying there's something wrong with you. And they might even take that on themselves. And so you want to be the voice of acceptance, of love, right? Exactly as they are. So that's the first step. And then reassure them that the type of connection that you want is not about perfection. It's not about performance. It's about presence. And sometimes, this is for you to understand that you wanting to have sex with your partner is not actually about the act. I've seen this in a lot of men. What they're looking for is security. Some men are having sex just to get out of their heads, right? And that's the only time is when they're having sex with their partner. That's the only time they can really be in the moment. They're living in their head so much. And so again, understanding what exactly you want to create. Is it that you want sex? Or is it that you're looking for physical affection, to be held, to be cared for? And is it just that society has told you as a man, you can't have all these things because that's weak. So instead, go for sex because that's manly, right? But no, you need to understand what it is you need. What does sex do for you? What does sex do for your partner? And I'll tell you this, if there's no reason for your partner to have sex, as in if it doesn't do anything for them, well then why would they want to have sex? And so understanding what the experience of sex is for your partner, inquiring about what type of sex it is worth wanting, starting to have these open conversations about that with them, their sexual beliefs, their sexual preferences, etc., is really going to start to create closeness and allow both of you to move into this place where sex no longer becomes about performance. Sex no longer becomes about the act of intercourse, but instead sex becomes about something that you create together, a place that you go that brings pleasure and connection to both of you, okay? So I hope this gives you a little bit of insight as to what's going on in terms of the sexual realm. The idea here is to really focus on, less about trying to get your partner to desire you, which feels great, and instead meeting your partner where they're at and starting to have these challenging conversations about connection, about intimacy, about the sexual realm, right? And being open and honest about your experience and inviting your partner into their experience. Not so you can get somewhere to have sex again, but instead so you can be together and kind of be in the mess and figure it out in a way that's connecting for both of you. Okay, so if you have found this helpful, please subscribe. Also below, you can actually just check out our free communication blueprint. This is actually a sequence of emails and videos that you're going to receive over 2 weeks that really help you understand some of the main challenges that we have about communication and connection and how you can do something different, right? Some actionable tips that you can implement in order to make an impact so the best years of your marriage are ahead of you. So that's just below in the comments. You can check it out, and I will see you in the next video. Let's go.